WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Darryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. So right now, we're dealing with a labor shortage. In particular, a labor shortage among care workers who serve people with disabilities. And this shortage is really leaving families in the lurch, causing disruptions to work, developmental setbacks. It's a very challenging situation as this industry struggles to keep enough employees to provide sufficient service. WBUR business reporter Yasmin Amer has been following this. And so we got Yasmin in here to talk with us and tell us more about why this is happening and if anything is being done about it. Yasmin, thanks so much for coming through.
Darryl, it's always nice to talk to you, and I know this is an important part of our economy, so let's talk about it.
Let's do it. So first, I want to start with, where does this story start for you?
So for me, this story starts with, I've been paying attention to the care work industry or the human services industry for a while now. I reported on childcare workers and the troubles they were having, and a lot of them are leaving. We keep hearing worker shortage over and over and over again, but what does that really mean? I mean, that really means families struggling. And so in the case of adults with disabilities, this actually means something pretty dangerous for them. Sometimes they're not able to get care at all, and sometimes they're not able to get enough care. And a lot of them are worried about taking a step back in terms of, their abilities and their ability to grow and meet people and live rich, fulfilling lives just like everybody wants to. And so in this case, what a shortage of caretakers means and care workers means is really consequential for families and their loved ones with disabilities.
Did you talk to any families affected by this?
I did. I spoke to a woman named Ann Kaufman, and she has a 22-year-old daughter named Maya who has schizoaffective disorder. And basically what that means for her is that sometimes she experiences hallucinations, but she needs full-time care that her family is not necessarily able to give her. She needs a professional. And so Maya recently aged out of youth care. She is 22. She was very fortunate to have a wonderful youth care center, live at a residential care center that helped her achieve all these milestones.
What kind of milestones?
Well, the most exciting one that Anne told me about was Maya was able to get on stage and perform Alanis Morissette, Wonderkin, in front of dozens of people. This was a really special moment for the family because Anne didn't think that Maya would want to get up on stage. Her music teacher and her other caretakers were really adamant about getting Maya more engaged, more social, and really tap into her creative side.
To get up on stage and to sing a song, an Alanis Morissette song at that, that's a pretty big deal. Now that she's aged out of that part of her education, what kind of services is she trying to access now?
I have to tell you something that really surprised me is that Ann Kaufman, the mom, told me that she started looking 4 years before Maya aged out of youth services. So when Maya was 18, 4 years before she turned 22, the family started looking for an appropriate home and care facility for Maya to transition into. The reason they started 4 years before is people advised them to just go ahead and keep an eye out because it's really hard to get placement because there's just not enough space. But then when COVID hit, even when they found centers that felt appropriate for Maya, some of them shut down. Anne told me several times that she would look online and she would look at the programming, and then to discover the webpage was just disconnected and that program no longer exists because they just didn't have the staffing or the funding to keep it up. And so that kind of illustrates my next point, which is a lot of these programs and centers and care facilities have been decimated. And if they haven't been decimated, they are experiencing vacancy rates anywhere from 25, 40% to some of them even up to 60, as I'm told.
What?
Yes. And so adults who are transitioning out of youth services when they're 22, a lot of them are left in limbo. either getting no care or care that isn't necessarily appropriate for their age or ability, or have real gaps in care.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more from Yasmin.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
So you're talking about a situation now where these care facilities are dealing with employee vacancies of anywhere between 25 to 60%. Mm-hmm. Who are these care workers? What kind of services do they provide? What kind of credentials do they hold? Tell me about them.
Ooh, so they are more than 80% women, first of all. That's an important thing to recognize, just because gender is a really important part of the care industry.
Huge.
And a lot of them are women of color. And a lot of them are also, these women who were not born in the U.S. So that's the demographic, first of all. I spoke to one care worker. She's a union leader, and she works in a care facility in Danvers. And her name is Noelle Lozada. And I just want you to hear how she describes her job.
We're nurses, we're doctors, we're therapists, we're personal shoppers, we're cooks, we're maids, we're the laundry people, we're the chauffeurs. Like, we wear so many hats, but yet our pay matches somebody who works in a fast food restaurant.
They're helping people live, and that means doing so many things for them because they have to be an essential part of these people's lives. But then when you consider that the median wage in this industry is $17 in Massachusetts...
Stop.
Yeah, $17 median. Noelle herself works 90 hours a week, so that's her full-time job and 2 other part-time jobs, and that is very typical in the industry. And so that's why a lot of people are leaving. They're just saying, you know what, this isn't worth it. I could go work in retail. To them, it might be an easier job, and they might get paid a little bit more, which is more than $20 an hour.
How could this be happening? I mean, this is something where the state is providing funds. Do the people who own and run these facilities, do they just not have enough money to pay? Are they not getting enough from the state? Like, what's going on to where these people who provide these vital services are being so underpaid and burnt out and stuff,
It's a really good question, and one that has multiple answers. And so if you talk from like a sociology perspective, I'm sure a sociologist will tell you that the care industry has just been, happening on the backs of women who have been underpaid for a long time. These, especially, again, women of color and immigrant women.
And probably have things going on at home. They have to be the caretaker at home in a lot of cases.
Right. But also, this industry has been underfunded for a very long time. And so this is like a decades-long problem. And even though we're seeing the worst of it now because of the pandemic, it's not just something that happened because of the pandemic. There are so many more competitive jobs out there in retail and like basically any other field you can think of. It probably pays more than care work. So people are leaving en masse. And so at this point, I have to say, like, there is some credit to Massachusetts because it has poured in nearly $800 million since the pandemic into this industry. But even then, it's really not enough. Again, this is decades of underfunding. A lot of people aren't really seeing like that significant of a boost to their wage, maybe like $1 or $2 more. That's not going to offset their, like $900 rent increase, which is what Noelle, the care worker I spoke to, is experiencing. And another glaring issue, Daryl, which is a statewide issue, but even worse in this industry is just the idea that Massachusetts just does not have enough workers. Immigration has been suffering nationwide, like we're just not getting enough immigrants.
Really?
Yeah, so nationwide, but this is even worse in Massachusetts because we need so many more workers and our region is aging. And so more people need services and we're getting fewer people into the state, immigrating into the state, wanting to do this job, whether to make it a career or a stepping stone. And so you can raise salaries, but you need people.
Wow. You blew my mind with that because there's so much talk about immigration and the struggles and the problems around it. To hear you say we're just not getting enough people to come here, that's fascinating to me. I want to ask you, we've heard a little bit about Maya. I'm curious to know about how exactly this affects families. Did you talk to other families who are dealing with a similar situation? What did you hear there?
I mean, in some ways, Maya is, I don't want to say lucky because the situation is far from perfect, but she does have a residential home, even though she's not getting these essential services that help her, again, grow and engage and just like live life to the fullest. A lot of people can't even get placed. And for just day services alone, that means the programs that are designed to get people with disabilities out in their communities, exploring, learning new skills. 4,500 people are on the wait list for those services. And that's according to the Association of Developmental Disabilities Providers. I'm told by people who are in the industry that family members have had to quit jobs and stay home with their loved ones to care for them. And that's not just an emotional consequence, that's an economic consequence. And also, family members are not necessarily like professional caretakers who are trained to do this type of stuff. And so it's just agonizing. It's a really bad situation for thousands of people in Massachusetts.
What can be done about this? Is any officials at the state level looking into this? What's going on there?
There are people in the industry who are giving kudos to the state for at least paying attention to this issue and actually putting some money behind trying to keep this industry from totally collapsing. But at this point, if I'm being honest, it feels like crisis control. And it's going to be interesting to follow, like, what kinds of permanent changes are being made structurally. Are we going to see higher permanent wage floors?
Mm-hmm.
That's what some people are asking for. But at the same time, again, we talk about just needing more workers in general. Are we going to see more visas for foreign workers? Because that's something the industry is just clamoring for. They want to see more workers. They need more people in these jobs. They need people trained. They need people reimbursed for their education and for their training because like people can't necessarily afford the time or the money to do that. It's a multi-pronged solution. It's not just simply throwing money at the issue. It's getting more people trained and it's getting more people paid a living wage.
Man, Yasmin, thank you so much for sharing this story with us. It's going to give me a lot to think about. So thank you for this.
Absolutely. And yes, it might sound dire. It is dire. But I mean, I will leave you with this slightly upbeat note is that more attention is being paid to it at the state level, policy level than probably ever. And so that's a good sign. We're just waiting to see if it sustains and if it turns into, something more permanent.
Well, with that, I'll say that's WBUR business reporter Yasmin Amer. And that's all for today. As always, thanks so much for listening to The Common. If there's anything you want to hear or you just want to give us some feedback, feel free to hit us up on Twitter at WBUR The Common or shoot us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. In the meantime, I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.